Brad, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this chat. You know, I think honestly, you were one of the first people I reached out to when I first thought about launching this show. It was in I want to say April at some point when I was planning on being out in Vegas for Thrive. And it took a little while to get it launched, but here we are almost about a year later. We finally made it happen. So I'm excited, man.
Likewise. Appreciate you having me.
100%. So, Brad, for people that might not know you and your story, give us the spark notes. You know, who you are, where you're coming from, what are you doing now?
I help people monetize their knowledge and or train people better. I am the CEO of a company called Lightspeed Virtual Training. I kind of stumbled into it on accident when I was out training people how to sell and close and persuade people for a living. Saw a huge deficiency in 90% of the training that was out there. So I kind of developed a platform, and now pretty much anyone uses it to train people better and or sell their content online.
Got it. So, I mean, a lot of people probably know Lightspeed VT, the VT being virtual training. Like, I know training is a huge thing for you in terms of your brand. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into what was going on before that. So what were some of the earlier years of your quote unquote career looking like? Like, where were you selling? What were you selling? And how did you eventually transition into the training space?
Well, I mean, I've sold all kinds of things throughout life, art, vacuums, cars, RVs, various other odds and ends. However, I got into sales because I realized very quickly that I didn't like hard labor. I got a job at the Forest Service, went up and had to carry around a 10-pound bag of water and squirt on the stumps that were still smoldering, getting poked in the eye with sticks, going up and down mountainsides in ash, air. It was terrible, like literally the hardest work you can think of. And so when I got a taste of that, I just knew this is not the deal for me. So ultimately, I opened up the newspaper and saw an ad for a car salesman position. So I went in, applied, got the job, and realized that sales is the secret. Sales is where it's at. I got to wear suits. They gave me a free car. I was making 3 times what I was making, working my ass off. Ultimately, about 18 years old is when I realized sales is where it's at. Now, at 6 years old or 7 years old, I got sent selling candy bars, and I did very well selling candy bars. So I've always been somewhat, let's say, the gift of gab. However, 18 is when I got my first job selling cars. So I stayed mostly in the car business, got really good at all the different positions, and then started training people to develop my sales team. And we took the dealership to the number one levels, and I just kind of got hooked helping people learn how to make more money. So I quit that at about 30 years old, and I started Lightspeed, which ultimately was going to be a training company. And then, I realized that the platform, the technology that I had inadvertently developed was the star of the show, not necessarily training. I kind of made a pivot and started focusing on the platform. And now here we are 20 years later, we're, doing over 8 figures. We're used by some of the biggest names on planet Earth. And we're killing the game, especially now with this COVID crap.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got to be online now. I think that was part of some of the interesting part of kind of the early stage, I guess, like March-ish here in the States, like watching people transition online. And if this didn't transition people online, they're never going to. I'm curious about the pivot. So as you stepped away from selling, you moved into training, like you weren't always doing it online, right? Like, talk to me a little bit about some of those early, like, I guess, like those first couple of years afterwards, before you made the transition fully virtual.
Well, originally I went out on the road, got paid $10,000 to stand in a room and teach as many people as they could pack in there. And the impact wasn't what I was used to. When I worked at a company, I was able to produce high-powered salespeople and sales managers relatively quickly and easily. And when I went out on the road to do it for myself, for some reason, I couldn't get the results. I couldn't get it to stick. And so I thought to myself, man, I got to quit doing this if I'm not really helping these people, because, reputation will get bad quick if you're not doing what you say you'll do. So I knew that I had to figure something out, because I was basically taking someone's 10 grand, saying what I said before, and then moving on to the next spot for their 10 grand, and then the next spot, so I was only there a day. And I knew quickly, that I had to figure this out, because if people aren't learning, no one's going to keep paying. Mm-hmm. So I was a little perplexed, because when I worked at this company, right before I started my own, I was able to produce and develop people easily. So I knew that I could do it. The only question was what was the difference? Why am I all of a sudden not able to do it? So I looked at the differences, and I came up with 4 glaring things, 4 things that if you do not have these things in your training program, then it's not necessarily a training program. You just think it is. So you have to have good content, right? Repetition, practice, and accountability. Those 4 things have to be in your training program in order for it to actually be training. Otherwise, you're not really training people, you're just exposing people. A lot of times companies will just give the good information, but there's no repetition, there's no practice, there's no accountability. So that's not training, that's exposing them to some good content. Do people pick up some things? Absolutely. That's why we see a little lift, but sure enough, a couple weeks down the road, it goes away. So once I realized those 4 ingredients were missing in my new business, the internet was just coming out, but still, right when I started, the internet wasn't really out. And so I decided to make interactive CD-ROMs. And then the interactive CD-ROMs worked well, but they would scratch, and I couldn't see if people were taking them and learning or not. So I said, man, I got to move these online and then be able to track and measure people. But the only difference was I wanted to make the program interactive, because in real life I would ask questions and respond accordingly. So I didn't just create a video hosting platform. I created a technology that allowed me to create interactive video, so I could engage people and ask questions and respond accordingly, almost as if I was training them one-on-one. And that's what made the system so effective. And of course, I built in the four mechanisms. So I can deliver good content. I can create and deliver superior content. I can allow people to go through it with repetition on demand. I can allow them to practice and role play through the simulations. And then I can hold them accountable to what it is they did or didn't do. So it started to work well, and companies started, picking up. And then I ran into competitors that trained people. Because again, first I just put my training in, and I was selling it with my training. And then I had people talk about, if you had so-and-so, we'd do it, but, we've never heard of you, and we love these guys and whatever. So I just decided to go close those guys on using my system. And so once I started closing the big name trainers on using my system, I figured I'd just let them go out and get all the business for us. So I kind of took a right turn and said, man, I'm going to let them be the hero and the celebrity and the star, and, I'll just build their stages. Because again, my business model allowed me to get a little piece of the revenue. I called it a piece for my niece, a little fraction of the action, a little tad, because I'm Brad. But anyway, so I figured I could go out there and compete with them, or I could collaborate with them. And to me, collaboration was a much better choice.
Yeah, that compete versus collaborate thing is something that that my buddy, our mutual friend Cole, always talks about. Like almost every single time. Almost every single call with our mastermind, he's talking about finding a way to collaborate with your competition. I'm curious about that piece right there. Like when you realize, was it kind of like a realization that you could only scale your own training system so far? And like, if you wanted to build a business bigger, you needed to collaborate, and that was the bigger opportunity? Or like,
no, I got tired of being told no. We like someone else. So I thought, well, if I had someone else, would you do it? And they're like, yeah, if you had someone else, we'd buy it. So I just went and fulfilled what people wanted. I mean, it's not rocket science. People buy solutions, right? And results. They don't buy products and services. They buy solutions and results.
Yeah.
So solution that they were looking for was a matter of me getting this person into my system. To me, it's just a natural pivot. Go get the people they want. I didn't want to sit there and fight an uphill battle. They had larger advertising budgets, larger names, brands, more well known. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer, right? I could fight with these people and try to, compete with them, or I could partner with them and let their advertising budgets and their names kind of bring us all up. And that's what happened. I mean, Lightspeed is known because all of the big names use it. So it kind of was a win-win for everybody. I kind of bowed out, so I didn't, compete with their training, and I empowered them to be scalable and actually get the job done better, and everybody wins.
That's interesting. The first time I ever heard of Lightspeed VT was probably like 2-3 years before I'd ever seen you speak or like learned about what you guys were doing. I was like, oh, that's interesting that the URL had Lightspeed VT in it, but it was a different brand. And it took a little while before I learned what you guys were doing. But I want to talk about these pieces, these 4 pillars, because I think this is what, the first time I saw you speak, this is what was so interesting to me, because I think so many things are lacking. And when you said it, it makes sense. But content, repetition, practice, and accountability. I think that most people buy courses on the internet, which is obviously huge right now because we can't be in person. There's a lot of virtual training going on. Well, I'm going to stay away from the word training word in a second, but like most of it's just content that's being delivered, right? Like, why do you think the other 3 are so massive or so important? Maybe it was because of the results that you saw, but like, why do you think training systems that are on your platform, like have the repetition, the practice, and accountability, are so much more superior to something that's just like a YouTube video?
Well, dude, I watch mixed martial arts. Doesn't make me a black belt. I watch golf. Doesn't make my game any better. So watching a video once is not going to do much, right? And that's what most people's training consists of. Reading a book once is not necessarily as good as reading it 10 times. Would you want to go to a church where the pastor read the Bible once? Would you want to go to a plastic surgeon who performed the procedure once? At the end of the day, folks, repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the mother of mastery, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. Anybody that's outstanding at anything they do, they didn't do it once. Okay, they've done it 1,000,000 times. They put 10,000 hours into practice their craft, whether it's a guitar or whether it's selling. It is a craft. There is techniques and moves, if you will. And anybody that does it with repetition is going to be better than someone who doesn't. Now, that's repetition. Then there's practice. You can ace a test and really understand material and not be able to execute on it because of your nerves, or you kind of fumble through it. You're not really used to it. So with the practice element, well, now it's going to give me the ability to practice what I learned and implement what I've learned, which gains experience and gets me a little more comfortable. And then the accountability is, if you're training people to do something and they don't do it, and you're not looking and you're not holding them accountable, well, then you're wasting your time anyway. Nobody's going to get better if you're training them what steps to take, and then you don't make them take the steps, or you don't see if they're training repeatedly. Like, companies will make you watch a video once and then check a box that says you're trained. You're not trained, you're exposed. And I don't know where you live, but Nevada, you could get arrested for exposure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. New York City's a little wild right now, so who knows? But that's interesting. Okay, so when you're talking repetition, you're talking mainly in terms of repetition of the content consumption, or like engaging with the content, and then practice would be like role playing, for example.
Yep.
Got it. I think the accountability piece is so interesting. Like, and it's interesting to me in the sense that I never realized that it wasn't really there. I think I look back at my time in corporate, and the only times that you have to like compliance trainings and like the sexual harassment stuff and the typical things that employees have to do. And frankly, most of the time I look at like everyone around and everyone's just like pressing play and like muting it and putting it in the background so they can keep working, you know? But like when it comes down to actually training on systems that you're doing for your job, people probably do that too. And then they're confused why the results aren't great. How do, for the accountability piece for you guys, is it primarily just tracking data in terms of what people are doing or like setting KPIs for teams? Like, what are some of your favorite metrics to follow for that in terms of making sure people are following along?
Well, all of those things, Lightspeed's tracking everything that's going on, but you know, you can tell if someone hasn't logged in, if they're
Mhm.
unengaged. So if I had a sales meeting and I said, everybody, this is the way you get promoted, this is the way you get more valuable to the company, this is the way you get more money. Okay, log in. I'll see you next Friday. And next Friday, I hit a button, and half my people didn't even log into that. So you can immediately identify that they're not interested. They're not engaged. They don't care. And if you want a group of people that care, you have to either, you know, give them something to care about, or, you know, find and build people that care. So if they aren't logging in, you know, if they're not logging in, okay, are you watching that? Because if they're not logging in, dude, trust me, they're not training. Okay, if they are logging in, then what are their test scores like? You know, how many times have they went through the material? And then what happened on their simulations? Like, you know, were they able to close a virtual customer? You know, why are you going to give them a real customer when they can't even handle a virtual customer? So you
Mhm.
get them to practice what it is you're teaching them. And then again, I can set the system to send me a report card on various things, you know, every day at noon, or as buttons are pushed. So like I could literally say, hey, if anybody clicks this button, you know, in this video, I want to get a text. So we have real-time notifications. So the accountability is just second to none. I mean, you build stuff with Lightspeed. So like, for example, I could build an interactive applicant screening tool that doesn't train anybody anything. It just screens people to see if I even want to interview them. Like, if I have 1,000 people applying at my company, why would I go out and talk to every single one of them? Like, let me just give you a password. If you can't get through this interactive filter, basically, you know, you won't even get to talk to me. Why? Well, because you weren't smart enough to press the right buttons, because you said things that didn't align with our core values, because you don't believe in, you know, whatever it is we believe in. So what if I just popped up in an interactive video and I said, hey, thanks for trying to get a job at Lightspeed. Out of curiosity, do you believe in hard work? They're like, not really. Okay, good. Do you believe that, you know, in ethics and integrity? You know, it just depends on the situation. You know, oh, really? Okay, good. Yet I'd tell that person after a few of those choices that, you know, we'll let you know if we're hiring. Where if they pick the right buttons, I could say, okay, let's schedule you an interview. So I just built an interactive applicant screening tool with the same system I train my people with, should I hire them. So really, Lightspeed allows you to build, right, create interactive content, deliver, track, and measure it. So you can use it for marketing. You can use it for, you know, all kinds of things. Training is just one of the things people use it for. But you know, ultimately, going back to your question, my favorite, you know, analytics or optics are just your basic. You know, are they interested? Are they engaged? Do they understand the material? Because you know, it doesn't matter if they went through it once. If they understand the material and they're able to execute. Some people have more talent than others. They're quicker, right?
Mhm.
So boom. So let them go. Let them go. My only job is to train them. I don't care. Like, for example, if I were a college that taught lawyers, you know, I would say you can take the bar exam. I don't care where you went to school. If you can pass that bar exam, then I'll make you a lawyer. Like, who cares where you learned it and how you learned it? The fact that you can pass the test shows me that you understand how to be a lawyer. What's the
Yeah.
difference between a lawyer that went to school for 8 years at Yale versus, and they could pass the same bar exam, and then somebody comes along that's never been to Yale, never been to law school, and they can pass the same bar exam? Why is the person that studied all that time better? You know, if you get the knowledge, you get the knowledge. So to me, I just want to get the knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it. And so that's why the training system is kind of the backbone of my businesses, because everything has to do with, you know, getting the knowledge from the experts and getting it to the people that need it. Whether you're a business owner that needs to teach your people how to sell and persuade, or or generate leads or create funnels or, build social media brands or whatever. There's experts that know how to do it. All you have to do is get their information to your people with repetition, practice, and accountability, and your people will get better. If you get just the video, right, there's no guarantee that you will achieve that goal. Why? Well, because it's just good content. You don't know. You're not tracking if they went through it. You're not testing them. You're not role playing with them. You're not holding them accountable because you don't see anything. So an online video is not training. Okay. And people need to be trained. They don't need to be exposed. What if I went to the doctor and I just got a shot next to my arm? You asked me 3 weeks later, how's the medicine? Well, it's not working. Well, that being training, a lot of people think, training, it's hard to measure. It's not hard to measure. I've doubled people's sales before, walking in and making sure everybody is trained and they know what to do in every situation, and they're skilled and they're capable. Coincidentally, the customer satisfaction index went up. Customers are happier with more capable employees.
Mm-hmm.
People appreciate efficiency and proficiency. So the better your employees are, the better chances you are to succeed, gain referrals, et cetera. Not to mention your liability goes down, your retention goes up, your profitability goes up, far beyond what any training costs. Like the average ROI on any training is over 300% ROI. So again, if I said every dollar you give me, I'll give you back $3, how many dollars would you give me?
All of them.
Yeah, but people don't recognize that, so they have very little training budgets. And when shit hits the fan, guess what they want to do? Cancel the training budget. We got to save. Dude, now you got a bunch of bumbling idiots that don't know anything. What if you have turnover? People are training people manually, and it's costing them dearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where my mind immediately goes is like, if we're only having great content, we're relying far too much on personal agency to handle the other three things, which is not a successful way to go. And there's far too much risk, I think. Okay, so last question I have around training, because I want to dig a little bit more into your story. Like, okay, so we have these 4 pillars: content, repetition, practice, and accountability. Say someone's listening to this and
got to say good content, Mike.
Sorry, good content, repetition, practice, and accountability.
Yeah, because if you train somebody incorrectly, properly, they'll do it incorrectly. Like if you train someone properly to do it wrong, they'll do it wrong. So you can't just give them content. It has to be good content. It has to be the right way to do it in the first place.
Got it. Okay. And that kind of leads to my question. So say someone's listening to this, and whether it's, they want to streamline the delivery of their own product or service to increase client results, or maybe train their teams for certain things like we've been talking about a little bit. Like, are these 4 things in order? Like, is that the order of importance? Obviously, without good content, we can't really get to the other 3 pillars, but is all that kind of in order there if they're looking for where to start?
Well, it's not in order. They are all needed. So again, if you're trying to double your business, I would write down 4 things. Number 1, sales. Sales cures a lot of problems. Okay, revenue's the answer to most people's problems in their business. So sales, you want to focus on 100%. You want to focus on customer service, because if people in your organization don't know how to love on your customers and make them all warm and fuzzy and give you referrals and talk good about you, well, then you need to focus on customer service. That's very important nowadays, especially with the internet. You can get a bad reputation in 5 seconds. Okay, 1 mishandled customer costs you a fortune. So then the next thing is, I would say, is compliance. Like 1 lawsuit could get you badly damaged, especially if you're a startup. So you want to make sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And then you want to focus on personal and team development. At the end of the day, do you want your team to be better in a month or the same?
Definitely not the same.
Okay, so guess what? If you don't do anything, they're going to be the same in a month as they were today. So you have to focus on personal and team development. Now, if someone said, Brad, that makes perfect sense. I agree 100%, but how? Okay, you take good content, repetition, practice, and accountability, and you focus it on sales. So what do you need? What do you need to increase and focus on sales and drive your productivity and revenue? You need good content delivered with repetition, practice, and accountability. That's all you need. So you can do it manually or you can do it virtually. You can use a system like mine, or you can freaking try to do it in person with a trainer, which doesn't work as well as automation. Now, trainers, when they hear that, they think, oh, that's not true. Dude, listen, I was a trainer. It is true. I can't train somebody in person better than I can train them online. Why? Well, because online, I can have them go through the content multiple times. If I try to do it personally, I won't say the same thing the same way every time. I'll forget things. I won't remember. I can't test everybody. I can't role play and practice with everybody. If I give them a password and I can virtually do it one-on-one, well, then I can. So plus I'll never forget, and I can track and measure and monitor and notify and all that other crap. So at the end of the day, if I were a trainer, I wouldn't be afraid of Lightspeed. I would be embracing Lightspeed because it will allow me to almost become like a doctor. You know, I see your problem because I'm training people here at this organization. I see that you need X and you need X. So what would my X be? I'm going to make sure I have sales, customer service, compliance, and personal and team development. Why? Because I want to generate an impact in my revenue. I want to freaking make sure everybody loves us so we grow. I want to make sure we don't get sued or knocked down. And I want to make sure that everybody continues to develop. So in a year, we're way better than we were today. Doesn't that make sense?
100%.
Okay, so
100%.
So a lot of people, again, they're like, well, I understand that, it makes sense, but how? Okay, dude, it's so simple. People make it difficult. You take good content. Now, if I ask you, Mike, do you know how to sell more? And you say no. Do you know anybody that does? Yeah, my sales guy, he's the best. Okay, so someone has the good content right on your team. Why? Well, dude, they're killing the game. What are they doing? What are they saying? So you want to take that person and now stop their productivity to go train other people, or no? Would you rather virtualize that person and let that person, which is the good content, pop up and deliver it with repetition to all the people that aren't selling as much? That's what you want to do. But you want to focus good content with repetition. So what does that mean? Well, if I'm going to have you go through my sales course, I'm going to have you go through it a minimum of 7 times. So I'm not going to let you print out your certificate of completion until you've done it 7 times. 7? Yeah. 7 times minimum, preferably 50. When you can lip sync the content word for word, you went through it enough.
Okay? Why 7?
7's minimum. And because that's when people start to get annoyed.
Got it.
So again, you're training somebody properly when they start to get annoyed that they have to do it. Okay, just like, when you want to get in shape, you get annoyed sometimes because it's not easy. You got to go to the gym. You got to freaking put the pain in. You got to get uncomfortable. There's no difference with training. You got to get uncomfortable. It's not comfortable going through content 7 times. It's comfortable going through it once, but that's not making a difference. Just like the gym, dude. If you go in and lift light weights once and then wonder why you didn't get in shape, well, that's why. You should have went in there and lifted heavier weights multiple times, right? And consistently done it. And a trainer gets your ass out of bed, makes you do it, the accountability, all of that's there. So if you want to increase your business, you focus on sales, customer service, compliance, and personal and team development. Now, how do you do it? You take good content in that particular field. You take good content, repetition, practice, and accountability. Repetition, practice, and accountability. And your sales will go up. That is a fact. It's not a maybe. Like, do it and see. Doubt me? Try it. Okay, then you just move on to customer service. Does everybody in your organization know how to treat your customers? Do they know what you expect? Do they know how to treat a customer? Do they know how to engage? Do they know your policies, your procedures? Do they know things? Train them. Okay, how do you train them? You get good content, deliver it with repetition, practice, and accountability. Then you look at the box that says compliance. Okay, does everybody know not to grab ass? Does everybody know not to freaking be racist and freaking, get us sued for something? Okay, well then you better make sure that you take good content, repetition, practice, and accountability. Now everybody's compliant. You have all the freaking proof you need. So if someone does something stupid, you can put the onus on them. You can prove you told them exactly multiple times not to do it. It's really the same thing, Mike. You just take good content, repetition, practice, and accountability, and you focus it on the area you want to see improvement on.
Yeah.
The areas that I would recommend is sales, customer service, compliance, and personal and team development. Because if you want to develop a team, you have to have a plan. You have to have content. You have to have good content. Deliver it with repetition, practice, and accountability. Training something you do, not something you did. So at the end of the day, to set up a real, true training system, you have two choices. You can do it manually, or you can do it virtually. Virtually is much more scalable, much more efficient, much less expensive. And, a lot of times people will be like, training is expensive. Well, I say, try not training. Okay? Don't train your people and see how expensive that is.
Yeah. The consistency piece, I think, is really, really cool. And it makes perfect sense. Like, you could say the same thing over and over again, but one, you're not going to say the same words usually. And two, like, you're probably not going to deliver it the same way. Like, God forbid you have a family emergency right before you have to go into training. Like that prospect or that employee is not going to get the same level of support that someone might have had right before or right after you closed a monster deal, right? The energy is going to be completely different.
You got that right.
I want to transition a little bit and talk about your story, because what I think is so cool about what you're doing with Lightspeed is the longevity of it. Like you mentioned, the internet was out when you started it, but it wasn't like, you guys were way ahead of your time. And I'm sure that was a bit of a challenge in the early years. Like, talk to me a little bit about building a business that is where things were going, but like the market may or may not have been ready for.
Well, that's what it is. I was just certain that it was a better way, because it was. And I just had to, be tough enough to outlast the market catching up. So, a lot of people would have started and quit, right? Because, it didn't happen immediately and they would have lost. So you have to stick with anything that you do. There has to be some sort of consistency, and same thing with building a business, man. You have to, do the right things, which is the good content, repeatedly, right? For long periods of time, and you got to hold yourself accountable. So, again, like, I won't take someone's money if I don't think we can help them. Like, we're beyond money. We're doing 8 figures, which is plenty for everybody involved. At the end of the day, if I can't help you, I don't want your money. I don't want you out talking shit about Lightspeed or me. Like, dude, I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire. We don't even have contracts. I literally tell people, if we can't keep your business, we don't deserve it. It's just month to month around here. Everyone's like, dude, that's crazy. It's like, why? What do I want to do? Hold your feet to the fire? What do I want to do? Beg you to stay in this relationship? No, man. If I'm not helping you, bro, dude, let me refer you to someone who can, right? I'm here to help people. You want to build a badass training system that works? Lightspeed VT is the only company on earth with everything you need under one roof. We've got the best technology, the most experience, all the resources. I mean, it's unbelievable. So when people understand what Lightspeed is, obviously we get them as a customer. So the story you wanted to transition to, is kind of like, I always wonder, what do people think my story is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is my story? Do you know it? Like, I need to figure out my story. Because again, I mean, I dropped out of high school at 16 in the beginning of 11th grade because my dad kicked me out of the house because I didn't mow the lawn. So now I didn't have any parental supervision. I'm 16 years old. I don't want to go to school, bro. I want to go out and hang out and do all the dumb shit, which is kind of what I did. So ultimately, I had to learn everything the hard way, which is why I wrote the book. I got a book coming out here in about 30 days called The Hard Way, which is lessons I learned the hard way so you don't have to. And it's all the things I wish I would have done when I was 18. It's the things that nobody really teaches you, but you learn on your own eventually. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, you might have to be 60 years old before you look back in your life and realize where you made your mistakes and what you should have done. Well, dude, there's a handful of those that apply universally. So I'm making a book of them to where like, dude, these are the lessons I learned the hard way so you don't have.
Do you guys have that? Is that available for pre-order now, or what's the launch look like?
Yeah, you go to bradleelea.com and pre-order it. You just order it and wait. I don't make promises.
Got it. We'll link all that out because I'm excited to check that out. And I think you're right. Like, some of these lessons are so universal. That's one of the coolest things to me is finding there are a lot of common lessons that get shared on this show, but everyone gets them to them different ways and like in different sectors of life. But kind of back to the good content, repetition, practice, and accountability, like they're universal. And I think we just complicate it when we think that we need to like bucket our skill sets or bucket our experiences. Brad, I'm curious about you though. Like, what is it about you that allowed you to endure 20 years in the same business? While I'm sure that the growth was, correct me if I'm wrong, but like kind of exponential. Like the last 5 to 10 years has been a lot more growth than the first 10. Is that fair?
Well, sure.
So, like, what about you and how you carry yourself as a business owner allowed you to delay gratification so well? Because I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with right now, especially when you look at social media and you see the kids with, you know, the rented supercars and all these different things. Like, delayed gratification is pretty foreign to a lot of people now. But it sounds like you did that really well. Like, what is it
No,
about you that allowed you to do that?
I didn't do it very well, dude. I blew a lot of money on, bottle service, big houses, fancy cars. But at the end of the day, ultimately, when I started, I wanted to be a billionaire and I wanted to build $1 billion company. Now, it seems like it's been about 90 days so far since I started, although it's been 20 years. So it might be a little naivety. However, think about it like this. You get up in the middle of the night, you got to take a piss. You head off towards the bathroom. Well, why don't you just stop in the kitchen and take a piss? Well, because that's not where you're headed, right? So what keeps me going is I'm not there yet. What drives me is I set a mark and a level and a destination, and I'm not there yet. And so, ask me again once I pass the $1 billion mark, and I might tell you a different answer. But folks, if you're losing motivation, it's because you're losing sight of why you were doing it in the first place. I know a lot of people that, shoot for 100 million and they come in at 20 million, and, 20 million is pretty damn comfortable, Mike, I got to say. Mm-hmm. But do you get comfortable and lazy and freaking satisfied, or do you have an internal drive that says you're not where you want to be? And there's too many people that just find comfort and they're like, this isn't so bad. Well, it wasn't. That wasn't your goal, though. So I have some weird, I got to prove it to myself and the world. And, who knows? Maybe deep down I have some, mommy issues or daddy issues. Who knows? All I know is, shit, I'm not where I want to be. I get up every day full of enthusiasm and optimism, and I fricking go out and I'm on my way somewhere. Just like if you jumped up to take a leak and you're on your way to the bathroom, nothing's going to stop you. You're going to get there.
Question I have about that is, how did you weigh the pivots that you made versus, like, I guess the term now would be shiny object syndrome? Like, some of those shiny objects might get you to that destination faster versus the pivot that you made of, collaborating with a lot of these leaders in your space and building a more like training based company. Like, how do you weigh those two things?
You just use common sense and try to figure out which direction will help more people. Because at the end of the day, dude, you want to make $1 million, solve 1 million problems, or one big one. But at the end of the day, dude, solve problems for people. That's how you get rich. That's how you build a business. You create a solution for people's problem, right? So anytime I kind of approach what should I do here, I always default to which one allows me to help more people. So I can press a button and create 10 million passwords, or I could go put a webinar on and 1,000 times for 1,000 people each. You're limited doing it manually. You're limited in certain ways. So as you approach decisions, just apply which one would allow me to help more people. Because if you can help more people, you're going to make a bigger impact. And you're going to make more money, and you're going to make more friends, and you're going to make more opportunity. So it's a real easy decision. You know, when I went this way, I saw, you know, yeah, I can make a whole bunch of money and become the guru, or I can help more people this way. Boom. No brainer.
Got it. Got it. So it's always in terms of quantifying impact, I guess.
Dude, if you're smart, yeah. Because again, there's short-term thinking and there's long-term thinking. And I'm a more of a long-term, short thinker. In other words, I don't have like 10-year goals, but I know that, you know, if I could help the whole world one time, I'd have everything I've ever dreamed of. If I could just help everybody once, you know. So when you boil it down to simplicity and you don't make it difficult, like what helps people? You know, does your podcast help people? Well, then freaking keep doing it. You know, why? Well, one day I can sell it like Joe Rogan. No, Joe Rogan didn't start his podcast so he could sell it one day. I guarantee you, dude. He liked talking to people. You know, he saw the opportunity. He saw the new medium. He jumped on it. Now that he made 100 million from doing it, you got to realize that I bet you money if you interview him, that wasn't his plan. He just wanted to freaking talk to his buddies, and he put it out there for everybody to listen to because it was interesting information. He wanted to help people see things differently and or consider things differently. But, you know, all of that philosophical nonsense boils down to one thing. Life isn't hard unless you make it hard. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's people that literally think life is hard. You ever heard life is hard?
All the time.
Okay, who's saying that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that Les Brown quote. It's like, if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. But if you do what's easy, your life will be hard.
Very, 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 very true. And again, I mean, you know, I don't want to sound like a angel or some sort of saint, but at the end of the day, life isn't hard, man. You wake up in the morning all by yourself without even thinking about it. You just wake up. Well, as soon as I wake up, instantly I understand how valuable it was to wake up. See what I'm saying? So if I gave you $1 million cash and said, you know, how do you feel? You'd be like, oh, dude, oh, man, I'd be fired up. I'd be excited. I'd be like freaking looking to go live life, man, $1 million free dollars. And if I said, I'll give you $1 million, but you can't wake up tomorrow, you'd be like, oh, no, thanks. Well, that means that you understand that waking up is worth more than $1 million. Well, absolutely. Well, then how come you wake up all bummed out? How come you wake up and dread going to work, dread living, dread spending the day dealing with things? It doesn't make sense. So I trained myself to be grateful by just putting a sign on my wall. The sign said, congratulations, you get another day, bitch. And anytime I woke up and I started thinking about car payments and repo trucks and shit that's going on in my life, I'd look at that sign and then I'd get up and I'd have the opportunity to get my car repoed. I had the opportunity to go to work and deal with the nonsense. I had an opportunity to miss rent. See what I'm saying? Because when you're thinking of the alternative, you there?
Yeah.
You there?
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you're thinking of the alternative where you don't get to wake up, dude, I'd love to wake up and owe somebody rent rather than not wake up at all. Wouldn't you?
100%.
Yeah. So when you shift your perspective, right, and you start to see things correctly, you know, everything's an opportunity now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think where my mind immediately goes right there is like the shifting of I have to versus I get to, right? And people, when people hear you talking about that, a lot of people immediately go to, oh, well, that's just like hopeless optimistic. But at the end of the day, it's just as many decisions to take the hard route as it is to take the easy route, right? And I think it just comes back to that personal agency piece of, okay, well, do I want my life to be difficult? Well, understanding that like the difficult stuff that we're going through right now, we made decisions that led to it. And we can make different decisions and it leads to the easy stuff. It's all perspective.
And it's common sense. Like, again, you want to change what you're getting, change what you're doing. You want to change what you're doing, change what you believe. You want to change what you believe, seek new information. The reason we changed our mind is because we got new information. So whatever you're getting is based on whatever you're doing, whatever you're deciding, whatever you're choosing. Okay. So if you want to change what you're getting, you have to change what you're doing. in order to change what you're doing, you have to change what you believe. And in order to change what you believe, you have to get new information to change it. So just every day, wake up and seek new information, crack a book, listen to podcasts, ask questions, pay attention. It's information's everywhere. Just most people are too stupid to get it.
Harsh, but true. Brad, I want to be respectful of your time. Before I ask you the last question, where do you hang out most on social? Where can people kind of get involved with what you and Lightspeed are doing?
Well, on social, it's Instagram for now.
All right, we'll link all that up. We'll link a link. We'll put a link to the book as well. And then if people want to, maybe they want to build a training system for their team, is it lightspeedvt.com?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So we'll put all that in the show notes. Brad, last question I have for you. Going all the way back, 16 years old, getting kicked out for not mowing the lawn, dropping out of school, learning those hard knocks through the early years of the sales, eventually transitioning into consulting, figuring out, hey man, I got to streamline this, all the way to where you're at right now. You've collaborated with these leaders, you built an 8-figure company, and you're 20 years in and only growing faster. This entire window, what's been the biggest lesson that you've learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
Ultimately, to seek information. I learned everything the hard way. It wasn't really the smart way. After all this, I look back and I think, man, I could have asked questions and, paid attention and got here in half the time, half the headache, half the brain damage, twice as much money, twice as many, better experiences. So at the end of the day, my advice would be to seek knowledge faster. Everything knows out there.
Brad, thank you for joining me, man. I enjoyed the conversation.
My pleasure, bro. Appreciate you having me.
100%.